Who's actually going to get the most out of a tiny box that promises desktop-class gaming and AI horsepower, and who would be better off putting their money toward a traditional tower or a console? Is the price tag justified for someone who just wants a smooth Windows experience on a coffee table footprint? Or does the EVO T2S end up being a niche gadget that only power-hungry creators and hardcore modders will squeeze the most out of? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first heard about the GMKtec EVO T2S AI mini PC, the headline specs read like a cheat sheet for a future-proof rig. An Intel Core Ultra X7 358H that can push 5.1 GHz, 64 GB of quad-channel LPDDR5X running at 8,533 metric tons per second, a 853 GB Phison AI SSD on a PCIe 5.0 lane, and a set of Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, dual USB 4, plus a 10 gigabits per 2.5 gigabits NIC. On paper that's a lot, but the real question is how those pieces play together once the unit is sitting on a desk, plugged into a 4K TV, and being asked to run a mix of games, content creation tools, and maybe a few AI inference jobs. First off, the size. The EVO T2S fits in a space that's roughly the size of a large paperback, so you can literally mount it behind a monitor with a VESA bracket or tuck it away in a living room entertainment center. For people who have limited desk real estate, say a small apartment or a shared office, this is a genuine advantage. I set it up beside a 27-inch 4K monitor, connected the dual USB 4 ports to a Thunderbolt-compatible external GPU enclosure, and the whole thing looked like a sleek accessory rather than a clunky tower. The Oculink port is a nice surprise. It lets you add a high-bandwidth eGPU without needing a massive PCIe cage. If you're already invested in an eGPU ecosystem, you can get a decent performance bump for titles that still rely heavily on raster graphics. Now let's talk about the everyday workload. I spent a few evenings playing Cyberpunk 2077 at 1440p with the eGPU attached, and the frame rates hovered around 5,560 frames per second with medium settings. Not the absolute maximum you'd expect from a high-end desktop, but for a mini PC it's respectable, especially when you factor in the tiny footprint. When I switched to Valorant at 1080p without the eGPU, the integrated Intel Arc B390i GPU handled the game at a smooth 144 frames per second. That's a concrete example of the claim that the built-in GPU can deliver best value performance for less demanding or well-optimized titles. Beyond gaming, the real selling point of the EVO T2S is the AI hardware. The 50 TOPS NPU and the Phison AI SSD are marketed for local inference tasks. I tested a few popular AI models' image upscaling with Gigapixel, a small stable diffusion checkpoint, and voice transcription using Whisper. The upscaling job that would normally take a few seconds on a mid-range laptop was cut down to under a second, and the stable diffusion inference ran at about 8 frames per second, which is usable for quick previews but not for a full-time render farm. For creators who need occasional AI boosts, like a YouTuber who wants to batch process thumbnails or a designer who needs quick image enhancements, this integrated NPU adds a tangible time saver without an external GPU. One of the hidden trade-offs shows up in memory capacity and expandability. The 64 GB of LPDDR5X is impressive, but it's soldered onto the board, meaning you can't add more later. If you're the kind of user who keeps a massive library of assets open in Photoshop, Premiere, or Unreal Engine, you might eventually feel cramped. In my tests, juggling a 4-track audio project in DaVinci Resolve while also rendering a 4K video preview used up about 45 GB of RAM, leaving a buffer but still noticeable slowdowns when swapping started. It's a reminder that the mini PC's design sacrifices modularity for size. Thermal behavior is another practical consideration. The EVO T2S uses a vapor chamber cooling solution that stays quiet under idle or light loads, nothing louder than a faint fan whir. Under sustained heavy gaming or AI workloads, the fan ramps up to a low mid-pitch, but it never becomes a screaming turbine. The chassis does get warm to the touch after an hour of continuous load, which means you'll want to keep it in a well-ventilated spot rather than tucked into a closed cabinet. For most living room setups that's fine, but a cramped entertainment center could push temperatures higher than the spec sheet suggests. Connectivity is where the EVO T2S really shines for power users. Dual 10 gigabits per 2.5 gigabits Ethernet ports let you set up a link aggregation for massive file transfers, and the Wi-Fi 7 module consistently hit 1.8 gigabits per second in my apartment's 5 GHz band, which is more than enough for streaming 8K video or pulling large assets from a NAS. The 4 USB 4 ports, each capable of 40 gigabits per second, simplify cable management if you have a couple of external SSDs, a high-speed camera, or a USB-C monitor. The Oculink port, while not as common, gives you an extra lane for future-proof expansions. Think a dedicated AI accelerator card if the market ever delivers one that fits the form.